1. Introduction. The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro, Kishimi and Fumitake Koga is a thought-provoking exploration of happiness, freedom and personal responsibility, presented through a philosophical dialogue between a young man and a philosopher. Drawing from the principles of Alfred Adler's psychology, the book challenges many deeply held assumptions about trauma, personality, relationships, and the meaning of a fulfilling life. Rather than offering motivational slogans or quick fixes, it invites readers into a rigorous conversation that questions how and why we live the way we do. The story begins with a dissatisfied young man who believes his unhappiness is rooted in his past experiences, personal shortcomings, and an unforgiving world. He has come to confront a philosopher known for making a bold claim that the world is simple, that people can change, and that anyone can be happy starting now. To the young man, these ideas feel unrealistic and even offensive. Life, as he sees it, is shaped by circumstances, trauma, and limitations that cannot simply be wished away. Determined to expose flaws in the philosopher's thinking, he engages him in a series of intense discussions. The philosopher, however, does not argue using sympathy or reassurance. Instead, he introduces a radically different way of understanding human behavior: Adlerian psychology. Unlike Freudian thought, which emphasizes past causes and unconscious drives, Adler's approach focuses on purpose and choice. Human beings, Adler argues, are not controlled by their past, but guided by the goals they pursue in the present. Even behaviors that appear self-destructive or limiting often serve a purpose, such as avoiding responsibility or protecting oneself from failure. The dialogue unfolds over 5 nights, each addressing a core theme of life: trauma, interpersonal relationships, freedom, community, and living in the present. The format allows the young man to resist, challenge, and emotionally react to the philosopher's ideas, making the reader an active participant rather than a passive observer. His frustration, disbelief, and gradual insight mirror the inner resistance many people feel when confronted with the idea that they are responsible for their own happiness. At its heart, The Courage to be Disliked presents a liberating yet demanding message. Happiness does not come from changing the past, gaining approval, or becoming special in the eyes of others. It comes from accepting oneself, contributing to others, and living according to one's own values, even at the risk of being disliked. The book argues that true freedom requires courage, the courage to abandon victimhood, to stop seeking validation, and to live sincerely in the present moment. 2. Denying trauma and the power of choice. The first major philosophical confrontation in The Courage to be Disliked centers on the idea of trauma and its role in shaping human behavior. The young man strongly believes that his personality, emotional struggles, and unhappiness are the inevitable outcomes of painful experiences from his past. From his perspective, people are formed by what has happened to them, and suffering is a natural consequence of wounds that never fully heal. The philosopher challenges this belief head-on, presenting one of Adlerian psychology's most radical claims. Trauma does not determine who we are. Adlerian psychology does not deny that people experience pain, loss, or hardship. Instead, it rejects the notion that these experiences dictate present behavior. The philosopher explains the difference between 2 ways of understanding human life. The first is etiology, a cause and effect approach that searches the past for explanations. The second is teleology, which focuses on purpose and intention. Adler argues that people act not because of what happened to them, but because of what they are trying to achieve in the present, even if they are not consciously aware of it. This perspective unsettles the young man. If his suffering is not caused by past trauma, then he must confront an uncomfortable possibility. that he is choosing his current way of living. The philosopher clarifies that this is not about blame or moral judgment. Rather, it is about recognizing agency. Many behaviors that appear irrational or harmful serve a hidden purpose. Anxiety, for example, may function as a tool to avoid taking risks. Anger may be used to control others. Even feelings of inferiority can become excuses to avoid responsibility or challenge. The discussion then turns to the concept of inferiority feelings. Adler believed that all people experience inferiority at some level, and that this is not inherently negative. In fact, feelings of inferiority can motivate growth, learning, and self-improvement. Problems arise when people develop an inferiority complex, using perceived weakness as justification for inaction. When someone says, "I cannot change because of my past," they are not describing a fact, but making a choice to remain where they are. The young man struggles to accept the idea that change can happen immediately. He believes personality is fixed, shaped by disposition and experience. The philosopher counters that personality is better understood as a lifestyle, a consistent pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving that a person has chosen. Because it is chosen, it can also be changed once it is understood. Time alone does not bring change. Decision does. This section introduces one of the book's most empowering yet demanding messages. People are not victims of their past. While experiences influence us, they do not imprison us unless we allow them to. The moment a person abandons the narrative of being determined by trauma, they regain the power to choose a new direction. This shift from explanation to action is the foundation of Adlerian psychology. Denying trauma in this context does not mean denying pain. It means refusing to let the past dictate the present. By recognizing choice and purpose in behavior, individuals reclaim responsibility for their lives, and with it, the possibility of genuine change and happiness. 3. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. In the third phase of the dialogue, the philosopher introduces what may be the most confronting claim of Adlerian psychology. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. At first, the young man finds this idea extreme and dismissive. He believes many struggles, such as anxiety, lack of confidence, or dissatisfaction with life, are deeply personal and internal. The philosopher responds that even these inner conflicts exist only in relation to others, whether real or imagined. According to Adler, human beings are fundamentally social creatures. From childhood onward, we define ourselves in comparison to others, siblings, classmates, colleagues, and society at large. Feelings of inferiority, superiority, envy, or resentment arise not from objective shortcomings, but from how we position ourselves within these relationships. When a person feels inferior, it is not because they lack value, but because they are measuring themselves against someone else. The philosopher explains that comparison inevitably leads to competition. When life is treated as a contest, people believe they must either win or lose. Some strive to dominate others to feel superior, while others withdraw entirely to avoid defeat. Both approaches damage relationships and isolate the individual. Adlerian psychology rejects competition as the foundation of human interaction, arguing instead for cooperation and equality. This discussion leads to the topic of recognition and praise. The young man admits that he wants to be acknowledged and admired by others. The philosopher points out that the desire for recognition places one's happiness in the hands of others. When approval becomes the goal, people begin living according to external expectations rather than their own values. This results in a loss of freedom because one's actions are guided by fear of disapproval. Adler proposes a powerful alternative known as the separation of tasks. Each person, the philosopher explains, has their own tasks in life. Your task is to live according to your principles and make your choices. Another person's task is to decide how they feel about those choices. When people try to manage others' opinions by seeking approval or avoiding criticism, they are interfering in tasks that are not theirs. True freedom, the philosopher argues, is the courage to be disliked. This idea shocks the young man. He believes being disliked must mean rejection or failure. The philosopher clarifies that he is not encouraging selfishness or intentional conflict. Rather, he is stating a fact. If you live honestly and independently, there will always be people who disagree with or dislike you. Attempting to avoid this reality leads to an unfree life built on self-censorship. The cost of freedom, in Adlerian terms, is the loss of guaranteed approval, but the reward is authenticity and inner peace. When people stop living to satisfy expectations, relationships become lighter. There is no longer a constant need to impress, explain, or defend oneself. This section reframes interpersonal relationships not as sources of anxiety, but as spaces for mutual respect between equals. By abandoning comparison, competition, and the need for recognition, individuals can engage with others without fear. Adlerian psychology does not call for isolation from society, but for healthier participation in it. Ultimately, by understanding that interpersonal problems arise from misplaced comparison and approval-seeking, individuals gain the freedom to live sincerely. When the fear of judgment fades, relationships lose their power to control one's happiness, and genuine connection becomes possible. 4. Community feeling and contribution to others. In the fourth stage of the dialogue, the philosopher shifts the focus from individual freedom to the concept of community feeling, which Alfred Adler regarded as the ultimate goal of human life. After challenging the young man's beliefs about trauma, comparison, and approval, the philosopher now addresses a deeper concern: how individuals can live meaningfully with others without losing themselves. Community feeling, he explains, is not about self-sacrifice or conformity, but about recognizing oneself as part of a larger whole. The young man initially interprets this idea with suspicion. He worries that living for the sake of others means suppressing one's desires or becoming dependent on social approval. The philosopher clarifies that Adlerian community feeling is not about pleasing people, but about belonging. It arises when a person feels connected to others as equals, rather than positioned above or below them. This sense of equality dissolves competition and allows cooperation to take its place. Central to this discussion is the idea of contribution. Adler believed that human beings find value in life when they feel useful to others. This usefulness, however, must not be confused with recognition or praise. True contribution does not depend on being acknowledged or rewarded. It is an internal awareness that one's actions have meaning within the community. When people contribute without seeking validation, they experience a natural sense of worth. The philosopher also introduces a crucial distinction between praise and encouragement. Praise, he explains, creates a vertical relationship. One person judges another as superior or inferior. Encouragement, on the other hand, affirms effort and existence without comparison. Adlerian psychology rejects both praise and punishment, advocating encouragement as a way to foster mutual respect and self-reliance. Another key idea presented is that no individual is the center of the world. When people believe everything revolves around their feelings and problems, suffering intensifies. Shifting attention outward, toward others and shared purpose, reduces self-absorption and anxiety. This does not mean ignoring one's own needs, but placing them within a broader human context. The philosopher emphasizes that trust in others is essential for community feeling. Trust differs from confidence. Confidence is based on evidence and expectations. while trust is a choice made without guarantees. By trusting others as comrades rather than rivals, individuals create the foundation for cooperation and belonging. Without trust, genuine contribution becomes impossible. As the dialogue progresses, the young man begins to see that self-acceptance is deeply connected to contribution. When people feel they are useful, they no longer need to prove their worth. This realization shifts the focus from "Am I good enough?" to "How can I participate?" In this way, community feeling becomes the bridge between personal freedom and social harmony. This section reveals one of Adlerian psychology's most profound insights. Happiness does not emerge from self-centered pursuit, but from connection. When individuals stop seeking superiority and instead aim to contribute, they discover a stable sense of belonging. Life gains meaning not through being special, but through being connected, standing alongside others rather than above them. 5. Living in the here and now. In the fifth part of the dialogue, the philosopher turns the young man's attention to how people relate to time and meaning. Many individuals, he explains, live as though their lives are suspended between regret for the past and anxiety about the future. They believe happiness will arrive once certain conditions are met: success, recognition, confidence, or security. Adlerian psychology challenges this way of living by asserting that life exists only in the present moment. The young man worries that focusing on the present sounds irresponsible or passive, as though one should abandon goals and ambition. The philosopher clarifies that Adler does not reject goals, but rejects postponing life until those goals are achieved. Living earnestly in the present means engaging fully in what one is doing now, rather than treating the present as a mere stepping stone to a future reward. This discussion leads to the distinction between self-affirmation and self-acceptance. Self-affirmation seeks to convince oneself of worth, often through comparison or positive thinking. Self-acceptance, by contrast, involves acknowledging both strengths and limitations without self-contempt. Adlerian psychology encourages people to accept what cannot be changed while committing to act courageously within their current abilities. Acceptance is not resignation. It is the foundation for growth. The philosopher then addresses what Adler called life lies. These are beliefs that delay living, such as, "I will start once I am confident," or "I will be happy when I succeed." Life lies provide comfort by avoiding responsibility, but they quietly erode vitality. When people wait for the perfect moment, life passes them by. Adler argues that there is no preparatory phase to life. Living itself is the practice. Another key idea explored is excessive self-consciousness. When people are overly focused on how they appear to others, they lose contact with genuine experience. This self-absorption intensifies anxiety and prevents authentic action. By shifting attention away from the self and toward contribution, individuals free themselves from constant self-evaluation. The philosopher uses a powerful metaphor to describe Adler's view of life. Life is not a journey toward a destination, but a series of moments, like dancing. A dancer does not dance in order to reach the end of the song. The dance itself is the purpose. Similarly, life should not be lived as a race toward future happiness, but as an active engagement with the present. Through this lens, happiness is no longer something to be acquired. It becomes a way of living, choosing to participate fully in each moment, regardless of outcome. Even suffering, Adler suggests, does not negate meaning if one continues to live earnestly. By the end of this section, the young man begins to understand that the question is not whether life has meaning in some absolute sense, but whether he is willing to assign meaning through his actions. The present moment is the only place where such meaning can exist. Living in the here and now, Adlerian psychology concludes, is not about escape. It is about courageously choosing life as it unfolds. 6. The courage to be normal and true freedom. In the 6th stage of the dialogue, the philosopher addresses one of the deepest and most uncomfortable human desires, the wish to be special. Throughout life, many people measure their worth by how exceptional they appear in comparison to others. Adlerian psychology identifies this desire for specialness as a major source of anxiety, competition, and dissatisfaction. The philosopher explains that the need to stand out often arises from feelings of inferiority and fear of insignificance. The young man resists this idea. He believes that without striving to be special, life would feel meaningless or dull. The philosopher counters by suggesting that the pursuit of specialness is itself a form of bondage. When individuals define themselves through superiority, they remain trapped in comparison. Even success becomes unstable because there is always someone better, faster, or more admired. True peace, Adler argues, comes not from standing above others, but from standing alongside them. This leads to the concept of the courage to be normal. To accept being ordinary requires bravery, because it means letting go of the fantasy that one must prove one's value. Being normal does not mean lacking ambition or giving up on growth. Rather, it means abandoning the belief that worth depends on comparison. Once this belief is released, people are free to pursue goals for their own sake, not as tools for validation. The philosopher then returns to Adler's definition of freedom. Freedom is not the absence of constraints or relationships, nor is it rebellion against society. Instead, freedom is living according to one's own principles without being governed by the fear of judgment. This freedom inevitably involves being disliked by some people. Approval cannot be guaranteed when one chooses authenticity over compliance. The young man struggles with this idea, fearing that being disliked means isolation or rejection. The philosopher reassures him that Adlerian freedom does not demand indifference or cruelty. It simply requires the separation of tasks. One's task is to live sincerely. How others react is their responsibility. When people accept this division, they stop sacrificing themselves for approval and begin living with integrity. Another important theme in this section is self-reliance, balanced with social harmony. Adler believed that a healthy individual is both self-reliant and oriented toward the common good. Dependence on praise undermines self-reliance, while isolation undermines harmony. The courage to be normal allows people to exist confidently within the community without striving for dominance or recognition. As the dialogue draws closer to resolution, the young man begins to see how his fear of being ordinary has shaped his life choices. He recognizes that many of his struggles were attempts to avoid feeling insignificant. This realization does not come with dramatic transformation, but with quiet clarity. He understands that happiness is not found in becoming special, but in living sincerely and contributing where one stands. This section reinforces Adlerian psychology's central message. Freedom and happiness arise when individuals release the need for superiority and accept themselves as they are. The courage to be normal is the courage to live honestly, without masks or comparisons. In doing so, people gain a form of freedom that is calm, grounded, and enduring. Freedom rooted not in being admired, but in being true to oneself. 7. Conclusion. The courage to be disliked presents a demanding yet deeply liberating philosophy of life. Through a sustained dialogue grounded in Alfred Adler's psychology, the book dismantles many comforting beliefs that quietly limit human freedom. Beliefs about trauma, approval, superiority, and happiness itself. Rather than offering reassurance or blame, Adlerian psychology places responsibility squarely in the hands of the individual, asserting that change is always possible from the present moment. At the heart of the book is a radical shift in perspective. Human beings are not controlled by their past, nor are they prisoners of circumstance. While experiences shape awareness, they do not dictate behavior unless one chooses to let them. By abandoning etiological thinking and embracing purpose-driven action, individuals reclaim agency over their lives. This insight alone transforms suffering from a fixed condition into a starting point for choice. The book further reveals that much of human distress originates in interpersonal relationships, specifically in comparison, competition, and the desire for recognition. When people seek approval or attempt to meet expectations, they surrender freedom. Adler's principle of separating tasks offers a practical way forward. Live according to one's values and allow others to think as they will. The willingness to be disliked becomes the price of authenticity and self-respect. Equally central is the concept of community feeling. Happiness, Adler argues, is not found in isolation or superiority, but in contribution. When individuals experience themselves as useful members of a larger whole, they no longer need to prove their worth. Encouragement replaces judgment, equality replaces hierarchy, and trust replaces fear. In this framework, self-acceptance and social harmony are not opposites, but partners. The book's insistence on living in the here and now further grounds its philosophy in everyday life. By rejecting life lies that postpone happiness, Adlerian psychology invites people to engage fully with the present. Life is not a race toward future success, but a series of moments that gain meaning through participation. To live earnestly is to act now, even without certainty. Ultimately, the courage to be disliked reframes happiness as a way of being rather than a destination. It requires courage. The courage to let go of victimhood, to accept being ordinary, and to live without guarantees of approval. This courage does not lead to isolation, but to freedom and connection grounded in honesty. The book closes without grand promises, offering instead a quiet challenge. If life has no inherent meaning, then meaning must be created through choice. In accepting this responsibility, individuals step into a life that is simpler, freer, and genuinely their own.